So as usual, I'll talk for 5 or 10 minutes before we sit. And I post this, what I say, to YouTube. So you can access it later if you want to hear it again. So I want to talk about something that personally I've found quite tricky. But I feel like, over time, I've got more of a handle on it. And that's being aware of awareness, or knowing that we know, having tuning into that sense of the awareness itself. Because the aim in practice is to know both what's happening and how it's happening, if you like, the objects happening in awareness and awareness itself. So the objects we can see in two ways. So they know the thing itself, the birds, the cars, the planes, we can know that, but that's quite a crude level of knowing. What we're more interested in doing is knowing the processes of body and mind. So knowing that seeing or hearing or touch sensations are happening, movements of mind, directionality, all those much more subtle ways of being with what's happening. So when we do that, there's just less conceptualizing going on. We haven't made the object a thing, but actually it's still a process, a mental process. So one of the practice instructions is don't go towards objects. And why we say that sort of cruder end of the knowing what something is, it stimulates thought, stimulates papancha, but it also stimulates craving and aversion. I like that thing, I don't like that thing, I want that happening, I don't want that happening. So all that becomes much more of a feature in our lives and in our meditation when we're sort of at that more crude end of making experience into a thing. So sometimes we're naturally in practice more aware of the objects. We're aware of the sounds, and we know what those sounds are. That doesn't really go away, that knowing what things are, but we can lean more into the relax around the sounds and the sights, the things that are happening. So yeah, sometimes more aware of objects, and sometimes more knowing or aware of the awareness. It's easy to forget, I think, about being aware of that we're aware. So sometimes it's just a case of remembering that that's possible, remembering and to check and see if that's accessible in this moment, because it's not always accessible. But yeah, leaning back, relaxing into the awareness rather than all the objects that are going on. And when we are able to be with the awareness, there's more balance in the mind, there's more equanimity, there's a much more spacious relationship to what's happening. There's a wiser perspective, and knowing that this is experience happening, these are objects arising, knowing of it. So one of the areas where I found it quite tricky is that it's easy to try too hard, to try and see awareness, to try and almost catch it happening. And that can create strain. It can feel like you're trying to sort of almost turn your awareness around so that it's sort of looking back. And that can take on a bit of a physical quality for me, I find. It brings about tension. like trying to catch the awareness itself. I'll say a little bit more about that later because it has its own sort of usefulness, that funnily enough. But what I found most helpful is to remember that if I'm aware of something, if something is being known, whatever that is, then the awareness has to be present because I'm aware of what's happening. So it's really just a question of tuning into that. You know, if relaxation's happening or if disliking is happening, then you just have to recognize that what's already knowing that relaxation is happening or whatever it is happening. Because we can't know what's happening without awareness already being present. With awareness already knowing what's happening. It's impossible. It's impossible. So for something to be known, there is knowing. Knowing is present. It has to be present. But we're not so used to tuning in to it. We're more used to, if you like, the two things being stuck together, but with the emphasis on what it is that's being known rather than the knowing of it. I can see a few sort of eyes looking sort of skywards if you're trying to figure out what I'm saying. So I'll try and find a couple of different ways to say it. And it can sound a bit technical, but it's really about remembering the awareness and relaxing in. And sometimes it will be accessible, sometimes not. And you may not find it helpful, what I've found so helpful, but I will just try and say it again in a different way. So what's known and the knowing of it are always happening together. They're always both going on. You can't have an object that's within your, say, something that's seeing, something that's being seen, the screen that's being seen, without a knowing of it. Seeing doesn't happen on its own. It has to have an awareness of it. It has to have be known. Otherwise, it wouldn't be recognized. So we're going to play with this in the meditation, play with recognizing awareness, hopefully without that sense of strain, and just tuning into what the knowing feels like. In a spacious, open way. But if you find that the effort is getting quite strong, that you're trying too hard, which is what I notice at times, that knowing in itself, that sort of efforting that's happening, I've found can quite easily be known. I think, oh, what is it that's recognizing that efforting quality? Oh, it's the awareness. And it becomes quite accessible in a funny sort of, well, not funny sort of way, but it becomes accessible. So anything can be a means to which, when it's recognized, to know, oh, it's the awareness that's knowing, and I know what that feels like. I know what the noticing, the recognizing, the knowing of that over-efforting feels like in the moment. Okay, let's do it. And yeah, I'll lead into the meditation and then let you go.